Good morning, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be here in this Cato Institute and Libertad y Progreso event. Peter Gutler, Ian Vasquez, Agustín Echevarni, all of them, thank you so much for this great opportunity. I have the pleasure today of moderating an extraordinary panel with three very important persons from the world of freedom, the ideas of liberty. Alberto Benegas Lynch, Deirdre McCloskey, and Axel Kaiser. I'm asking all three of them to come and sit on the podium. Alberto, Deirdre, and Axel, please do come on stage.
Mientras toman su asiento,
While they get seated, I'd like to share with you part of the reason why we are starting this event. Alberto, Deirdre, and Axel, kindly be seated. The reason for starting this event with the topic of the culture of liberty. When we talk about the culture of liberty, we talk about a cultural battle of the ideas of liberty, the public acceptability of these ideas versus the arguments that are mentioned in the academia. Almost 25 years ago, James Buchanan claimed a fundamental question. On January 1st in the year 2000, in the Wall Street Journal, he talked about saving the soul of classical liberalism, and we found it a bit strange that that was the dilemma by Buchanan back then. He said that classical liberals, those who defend the ideas of liberty, even with all of the dissent that may exist among us, it was necessary to articulate the message of liberty at a level of public acceptance similar to what the advocates of socialism were using. Beyond the ideological battle, it was rather how to penetrate in vox populi, how to build narratives that would foster this culture of liberty. And we have the great privilege this morning, starting this event, once again, of having these three personalities. We are going to start with Alberto Benegas Lynch, the intellectual father of all of us, our big friend, the big referent of liberal thinking, classical liberal thinking in Latin America. Alberto sent his resume, but I would need 35 minutes to read it, so I will just give him the floor. Thank you so much, Alberto.
Muchas gracias, Roberto, por esa tan generosa.
For your wonderful presentation and generous one. I really thank you all for this invitation, especially for those who are responsible for organizing this event, especially to Agustín, because in these cases, whenever you want to put in place any kind of organization, plan, or project, you rely on a team, on a work team, which in this case is specifically based on two wonderful assistants, Candelaria and Sofia. For the four persons I have just mentioned, I suggest that you make a big round of applause. Thank you. As this is a panel that has been titled The Culture of Liberty, I would like to underscore that I myself, as you in the audience, are really ashamed in the bulwark of the USA in 4 universities, Ivy League universities, where terrorists were supported, Hamas terrorists were supported by students and professors. We are ashamed of this fact, especially occurring in the USA. There is something over there that is happening in the educational field that is very serious indeed, and therefore I suggest that we should review the great book Inside American Education by Thomas Sowell. In my book, Estados Unidos contra Estados Unidos, America Against America, I showed that there's a decline in the U.S. and how they have gone against fundamental values, moral values, supported by our founding fathers and their founding fathers. And a second comment I would like to share with you in my very brief introduction right now is the following. Ad nauseam, I have repeated that we classical liberals are not a herd, and we hate the unique thought. Therefore, we welcome disagreements, differences, debates among ourselves, always maintaining the backbone of the classical liberal spirit, reciprocal and mutual respect. Therefore, whenever we read any book once again, we say, pity, I did not include a different argument, or I want to change. And Borges, citing Alfonso Reyes, quoting him, said, if you don't publish your works, you are always reviewing your books, correcting them, because there is no perfect text. In my library, behind my computer, nullius in verbis is my motto, which is the London Society motto. There are no final words, as Karl Popper showed us. Knowledge is based on confirmations, open and subject to refutations and rebukes. So the very short comment I would like to make right now, because this is a panel based on culture, is a moral topic, a topic based on morality, which is the following what we economists call inflation, which is an embezzlement against the most vulnerable and underprivileged people. This is a tax that has not been passed as an act in Congress. I have published my book, Fundamentos, Análisis Económico, prologue by William Simon and Friedrich Hayek, where I repeated once and again a core subject, the need to eliminate the central bank. As I mentioned in the book fair in Buenos Aires last year, in my opinion, the current president of Argentina has ratified and reiterated once and again the compelling need to wipe out the central bank. Makes me feel a wonderful intellectual orgasm, I should say. Central bankers may have good intentions, may be competent and honest indeed, are based on 3 roads: what rate to issue to leave the monetary base as such, or to create inflation. The 3 roads alter relative prices, and prices are the only indicators that the market has in order to operate correctly. Now, if we say, don't exaggerate. Imagine central bankers have a very special perception as to what people want and wish, and do what people want and wish in the monetary field. The question is, what the heck are you doing if people can do the same thing? And they, of course, say feats. So the idea of having an independent central bank is not true, because central bankers are making mistakes independently because there's no way out. And if we call into the Apollon fallacy, well, but where have you ever seen a country having no country? Think about Hong Kong, Ecuador, El Salvador. The key thing here is that our ancestors, because we come from the primitive ages, if our old ancestors in the Stone Age, should have said, well, there is no background or antecedent for any kind of institutions. We should be here in the Stone Age using the the arrow and the stone. So, I mean, the central and core idea here concerning central bankers is the fact that they are not doing the right thing. In all the central bank charters, we have a bullet point included. The main purpose is to preserve the value of currency. The Bank of England, when they abandoned the gold standard, remember that central banks were born in the 20th century. They are not old. No bank, no central bank has ever preserved the value of currency, the unit of currency. No, they have never done so. On the other hand, I think that it's very interesting that in the fifth point of the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels, 1848, they advised that they should have a central bank in order to hold the monopoly of money. And as a digression, I should say that I am amazed at the fact, and you are amazed also, that the 10 points of that Communist Manifesto to wipe out the capitalist system, as dubbed by Marx, were adopted by the free world freely and willfully. Friedrich Hayek opened up this wonderful channel for discussion and debate where money in 1976, the nationalization of money. The good translation in Spanish is la privatización del dinero. Is a wonderful example to close these remarks by quoting Milton Friedman, who had different stages and different proposals. The last one, in Money and Mischief in 1999, he said, and I'm closing with this, please pay attention to this quotation. Money is a very important topic to leave it in the hands of central bankers. Thank you so much. Thank you, my dear Alberto. We are going to deal with this topic throughout these 2 days. But that aspect, the legal aspect of money, where the rate of inflation is 2.7 or 3.1 or 0.7, Judy Shelton mentioned, why not 0% inflation? There's a moral necessity and need to have a stable unit of currency. So, Alberto, thank you so much, because you have come with a wonderful topic, central bankers. And now, Deirdre McCloskey. What can we say about her? She is the classical liberal encyclopedia, kicking and alive, walking history, literature, science, price theory, economic history. She knows about everything. And of course, she can tell us who is going to win the Cup of America as well. I admire her deeply. She's a wonderful woman. It's a privilege for us to have her with us. She's the chair, Appleton Chair at the Cato Institute.
Gracias. Thank you very much.
My favorite word is liberty. I often stutter on the word. Socialism I can say anytime, but I say libertad and I stutter, but still. What is it? What is liberalism? I think the core idea is equality of permission. My grandmother was born in the 1890s, and she had a motto that she would use all the time that came from the transition from horses to the automobile, which she saw as a girl. It is, do anything you want, but don't scare the horses. And I think that's a deeply liberal idea. Do anything you want except the big externalities. If you hurt someone badly, there's a case for government intervention. But it's small. It's small. This idea was contrary to the old idea of hierarchy, right? The king down to the family dog. The old view was that kings always win and women always lose. Now it's the other way around, or it should be. But the problem is that our masters, the geniuses in Washington and here and in Brussels, they're so smart. They're the new kings or the new queens. And they're, in the joke, they're from the government and they're here to help you. Now, this basic idea, equality of permission, is not the other kinds of equality that our friends or our enemies on the left and right favor. They favor equality of outcome or equality of opportunity. Equality of outcome has never worked. Inside a family or a small group of friends, it works just fine. And so does equality of opportunity. It works well in a small group. Good. I'm all for it. The family is a socialist enterprise. And it should be. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't have our 6-year-old going out into the market to work to pay for lunch. He should just get lunch from his mother. All right. So, but those equalities don't work at the societal level. They don't work for what Hayek called the Great Society. They work for small groups, not for big. But equality of permission, letting you start a business when you want, letting you enter an occupation when you want without a state license, allowing you to move where you want, allowing you to buy and sell with anyone. That equality of permission we can achieve tomorrow. How? How? By taking away the obstacles that modern government has imposed. Tariffs on foreign goods, regulation. The Argentinian economy, I'm told, is one of the most regulated in the world. It's like India under what they called the license Raj in the old days before 1991. So equality of permission we can get. And Argentina had it. Until 1907, Argentinian children were taught that the principle of governance in Argentina is the liberty of the individual. From 1907 on, in reaction to the large migration, especially of Italians, the kings were reestablished, the hierarchy. The king tells you what to do. Your husband tells you what to do. You're constrained violently, coercively. And then, from that time on, Argentina started to fall in income per head compared with, say, the United States. Now, this year, Argentina has an opportunity to go back to what made it rich originally. And that was equality of permission. Now understand that this idea, this liberal idea, was new in the 1700s. The ancient hierarchy of agriculture with the landlord and the peasant was ancient. It had existed since the invention of agriculture. But in northwestern Europe, Holland, England, Scotland, the North American colonies of England, this new idea came. And out of it came enterprise, entrepreneurship, the enormous amount of riches we now have. I mean, look around you. Invention everywhere. Institutional invention, mechanical invention, biological invention. But the theory is that that's caused by the modern state. No, it isn't. It was not exploitation. It was not capital accumulation. It was not the schemes of the state, the building of canals and so forth. That's not what made us rich. What made us rich was individual ideas. Every innovation starts with some one man or woman thinking up a new way of doing things. Structural concrete, which is all around us, just to give one example, was invented by a French farmer in the middle of the 19th century. As soon as there was cheap steel, you could put reinforcing rods in concrete and make it much stronger and build tall buildings. So it's from ideas, it's from the environment for free ideas that our riches come and our personal development comes. They call it in German Bildung. That's what we need. We need individual liberty. See, I stutter in it. Liberty. All right. So it's not to the state we should turn for salvation. Nowadays, people like Joseph Stiglitz and Mariana Mazzucato suggest that the state get bigger and bigger and bigger. They seem to think it's a kind of a family, but it's not. It's coercive. It uses the fist. So I recommend, you recommend, Millet recommends a society of free individuals innovating. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. Such an important message for the challenges we face in developing this culture of liberty. And as always, we learn a great deal from your insights. Vamos a tener preguntas y respuestas. Después hay.
We are going to have questions and answers. We have an application called El Renacer de la Libertad in the App Store. You can download it, write your questions there, and I will have an iPad where I will select according, at my discretion, what questions I am going to choose. We will have 10 or 15 minutes. Now is the time to give the floor to a person who has been a big example for Latin America of how to take the debate of the ideas of liberty to the level of public acceptability that Jim Buchanan talked about. Axel Kaiser has insisted for 15 years, if you don't have the battle of ideas, if we don't take the culture of liberty, we run the risk of it falling down, and everybody said he is crazy, he doesn't know what he's talking about, everything has been solved in Chile. And what happened in 2019? Well, by having abandoned this struggle for ideas, this cultural battle, it ended not only in crisis in Chile, but around the world. And it made us question whether our exercise was worth it and how to rebuild the issue of the culture of liberty before the collapse that took place in Chile. With Argentina, a person who is close to President Milei in the area of ideas, Axel, has shown the example to follow for many new generations. It is a privilege to have Axel with us today. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank Libertad y Progreso and Cato and everybody who has made this possible. And it's an honor to be with two professors that I have learned so much from, Deirdre and Alberto. For all the rest, there is MasterCard. It's a maximum pleasure for us. And I'm going to talk about why do we lose? And I want to offer an answer to this question in the light not only of intellectual work performed in recent decades, but also based on my personal experience fighting in the region, so where the Marxist and socialist alternative is at its highest, which is in Latin America. The most determining reflection that has ever been given, the response that has been given to why do we classical liberals lose against socialists the answer was proposed by Friedrich Hayek in 1949, and I'd like to read it to you because I think it is the key for the dispute that we are faced with. Hayek says that the lesson to be learned by the true classical liberal from the socialist success is that their courage to be utopian was what gave them such an influence that makes it possible what seemed impossible. It was the courage of being utopians. It was the socialists' courage of being utopians. And that is what we are faced with. We need to think about the utopia, a concept coined by Thomas More in his work from 1516. We all know utopia is a place that doesn't exist. U implies it doesn't exist. Topos implies place, a place that doesn't exist. But he also talks about utopia, the good place, the happy place. So we understand utopia as a sort of paradise. Utopian thinking appears for the first time in clay tablets in the year 2000 before Christ, and they are found throughout all cultures in the history of mankind. And what do these utopian thinking forms have in common? There are two issues that are repeated time and again. The elimination of scarcity. In utopian thinking, nobody lacks anything. There are no needs. There is no hunger, nothing similar to that. And something that I consider even more relevant, there is social harmony. Conflict between the various groups and social classes disappears. Now, the question is, utopias. Do they propose a detailed program? No, these are social dreams with general ideas about a perfect order. And this is the point. A utopia tends to offer a perfect type of order. Since everything is okay, there is no movement in the utopian, and there is no need for change. Who would like to change something that is perfect? Nobody. Now, what's the essence of the socialist utopia? We know that socialists work on envy and hatred. That is true. As Bertrand Russell said, talking about Marx, Bertrand Russell said that Marx was more worried of destroying bourgeoisie than alleviating the bad conditions of the proletarians. But he also promised what we are discussing. There would be collective wealth that is going to be distributed. But not only that, Marx also promised, and socialists in general have promised, and this is where we classical liberals lose, a utopia of fraternal love. That is what they promise. When Pope Francis says that it is the communists who think like true Christians, and I'm quoting the Pope, what he's referring to is that there is a moral intuition in the socialist utopia that reflects these fundamental values of the Christian message related to "you're not going to be alone." Allow me to quote a very important Marxist philosopher of the 20th century, Gerald Cowen, who was a professor in Oxford, who wrote a book, Why Not Socialism? And he says the following when defining socialism. He says, socialism means community, that is to say, that people will worry and will care for others. It is about community care. And that requires a similar life experience of all people. If you're a multimillionaire, you cannot have a similar experience with a person who is poor, so the idea of community disappears. It is very important to bear this in mind because the problem of classical liberalism for all of us here relates to two things. The economic reductionism that it has fallen in. Roberto mentioned that, the saving soul of classical liberalism. It's true. We classical liberals have focused on the technical economic scores of GDP growth and figures and social mobility, and we have lost the soul of classical liberalism. And that is the soul of classical liberalism. I do not say that economic discussion is irrelevant. It is fundamental, but we have reduced the discussion to that. Chile is a successful example of reform, but we in Chile destroyed the country because economists and experts in public policy lost the debate against the jurists and the left philosophers. Economists were discussing with numbers, while others were using justice theories. And the moral argument is always going to be more powerful than the technical one because it goes deeper into people. I wrote this, I warned about this, it happened. We are trying to revert it, and that is what Javier Milei has done in Argentina. He has made a moral argument for the libertarian movement, and that has been the key of the cultural transformation that is taking place in Argentina. And he has not only focused on inflation, but rather on the moral case for freedom. That is what we have lost. And the second problem is reductionism of autonomy. This is the most important problem that we classical liberals face. We need to convince the audience. Why? We have conveyed the following idea. The state should remain aside. You do what you want to do with your life, and I don't care. We don't mind. We don't care about the rest. That is the feeling, the sensation. As long as you choose freely, we don't mind whether you decide to be a drug addict or PlayStation the whole day and waste your life, etc. That is the feeling that is transmitted in this discussion. It's not the reality of those who think in the ideas of freedom, but that is the feeling that is installed. While socialists care for the others because of the idea of community, we liberals say autonomy, the state should remain aside, and we don't mind. And many feel abandoned from the point of view of the classical liberal discourse. So what is the solution? To offer and have the courage to talk about a liberal utopia. Not a utopia as analyzed by Karl Popper, but rather a realistic utopia. And that is the concept of human flourishing that we have discussed with Gonzalo. This is not powerful from the rhetorical point of view, flourishing, human flourishing. It is a more powerful concept, which implies that we take care of a series of dimensions that relate with people's lives, such as the idea of a good life. What is a good life? What do liberals reply to the question, what is a good life, respecting the projects of people to do what they want with their lives? Do we have an answer to that or not? And if we don't, as Neil Ferguson says, then we classical liberals, and this is a critic he does, we are at a deficit compared to one of the most profound wishes of the human spirit. I have the freedom, I have the liberty, now what next? And it's not that we have no answer. Deirdre has offered an answer when she talks about the bourgeois virtues. A free society cannot exist without virtuous individuals. What does it mean to be responsible, to be able to respond? You have to have the installed capacity to respond, and that requires a series of virtues such as courage and being an adult, as Deirdre says. To conclude, I'd like to read a phrase by Gerald Cohen, the Marxist philosopher. Cohen says, socialism has an eternal attraction because it expresses the dream of cooperation and justice that goes beyond concrete historical moments. The values are an integral part of the human ethical landscape. While classical liberals, if we don't formulate a convincing alternative to the socialist utopian promise, taking care of these characteristics of the ethical human landscape, we will be defeated time and again by socialists. Thank you so much.
Gracias, Axel. Tenemos la tablet que estaba yo esperando. Muchas gracias.
Aquí sí la vuelve a activar.
Alberto, a question to you. I had several questions. Human flourishing, topic touched upon by Axel, is very interesting indeed, and you, Alberto, started by telling us that we have to take into account moral considerations first. Roberto, if I may add something, I'd like to underscore 2 bullet points made by Axel. Number 1, in my book, Maldita Coyuntura, Damn It Situation, the editor-in-chief asked me to write in the back cover what Marxists in Paris 1968 used to say: let's be realist, ask for the impossible, and agreeing with Axel, this is what we need, classical liberals. We are lacking that concept. And number 2, I'm satisfied at the fact that Javier Milei has cited my definition and limited respect for the life projects of other people. And I skip the term tolerance because it has a sort of shade of meaning which is inquisitorial, because you are tolerating rights. No, you shouldn't tolerate rights. You should respect rights. Liberalismo no se corta en tajos is an essay where I take into account historical, economic, and moral aspects of classical liberalism. Thank you, Alberto. Well, we have answered the question, which has to do with the entrepreneurship culture. What is an entrepreneur for us? Axel invited us to consider that an entrepreneur is a human being that is adding value, creating new things, and contributing to the culture based on human flourishing. Deirdre.
I think is very important It's great what's happened in Argentina. I think it's been a watershed moment, but other countries in Latin America continue, including my own country in Mexico, continue to be beset by the siren song of populism. How do we overcome this?
Well, you can try to appeal to the mind, to logic, to evidence, to history, and that's my job. I'm a hopeless economist and historian, but I think one must appeal to the heart, to the morality of capitalism, and I think that's where we need to move. And I think Millet is moving that way. His liberal populism, the way he says, you know, he says bad words against the statists. He calls them names and so on, and people like that. It's an appeal to the heart. Look, another word for liberalism is adultism. Adultism. Because all the other political philosophies, and all of them, monarchism and socialism and this nationalism and so forth, they all treat us as children. Bad children, or sad children, but anyway, children. And the great thing is to appeal to the heart. Now, the problem is that the socialists have better songs. Los Cuatro Generales, you know, okay. But we need to appeal to the heart. The artists, the journalists, the filmmakers, the song makers. That's what we need to do.
Very good. Thank you, Deirdre. There are many questions here on education, sobre educación. Tenemos muchísimas preguntas sobre el tema educativo. La relación entre
We have many questions on education, the relationship between poverty and the current educational system in place, which are, of course, relevant to Argentina, but to all the Latin American region. We only have 2 more minutes, Axel, Alberto, because we have a full session on education. But would you like to share very brief ideas on how to cope with this challenge, education? Well, in my opinion, I think that we should consider, in the field of education, to abandon the terminology public education, because private education is also for the public. State-run education is not a very good word, like state, theater, drama. No, this is different. Private education is also for the public, generally speaking. Secondly, I think that we are talking about a transition period, so we have to make an initiative, and I quote Milton Friedman, and vouchers in schools. Parents and candidates throughout a trial and error process should choose the educational institutions of their choice. Because I am amazed at TV people saying political leaders should sit down and design the country we like. Well, you shouldn't sit down. You can imagine your own country standing up. But joking apart, the vertex of power is the decision maker. So we have politicians deciding on how curricula will be designed. That's contrary to education. There's no freedom. I do understand that there are different political structures and moments. Politicians go against the academia many a time because they have different interests. But it is very important for us to clearly understand that education is based on these trial and error processes, and in closing, to have a Ministry of Educational Cost is a slap in our face, a slap on our educational face and on education. Axel, 30 seconds only. Alberto mentioned if the state is involved in education, the state is going to destroy education. In Chile, we had an experience with Michelle Bachelet when she took office. 70% of Chilean students with vouchers, studying at voucher schools. And Michelle Bachelet, a communist socialist, destroyed the voucher school system and hindered the possibility for parents to make a choice concerning the schools of their choice, and they could, of course, co-pay education, and there was a collapse in educational level, and we're paying the cost of that. If the state gets involved with education, there will be no possibility to improve educational levels. We have to separate education and state, and we have to separate education and church, as we have separated years ago. Thank you, Axel. Unfortunately, time's up. We have a wonderful program in place, and many of these questions will remain with us for the next panel sessions. A big round of applause for our three wonderful speakers.